Welcome to In the Blue. I am your host, Dr. Corey Frogley. Grateful to be back with you. I've been missing for a couple weeks. I took my family to Kauai and ran into a hurricane of all things. But luckily, it didn't hit Kauai too bad. So we got a little rain, but had a blast with the family out there. Got the nice tan coming back that I'm sure will fade pretty quickly. But today's topic is a pretty exciting one for us because it actually parallels our next upcoming feature release, which many of you know we're getting ready to release our insights, our patient insights, which is going to optimize your morning huddles, optimize your patient engagement, and drive the patient experience, whether that's on the phone or in your practice, where you're face to face with the practice, to drive collections and appointments and maximizing those experiences. And that's really our host today. Brandon Allen is an expert in helping businesses, practices design their ideal experience. Like great practices, great businesses, as you know, it just doesn't happen. It materializes with time. And I have been honored to be able to sit in Brandon's lectures at his knee, listening to his own podcast. This is a guy that has decades of experience in the corporate world that brought that experience down to the medium and small business sector and is now working with literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of practices. In fact, wrote his own book called The Management Playbook that's available on Amazon. Highly encourage you to read that, pull that off. And the name of this podcast is The New Work Revolution. So, Brandon, excited about the topic today, man, and great to have you as part of our show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So let's jump into this because this is a wealth of information and one that is, I can't emphasize for our audience enough of getting into this, that your encouragement for business owners that you can't just show up to work. You need to design the destination of where you're headed. Expound on that for us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I look at when it comes to productivity, I have two things that I want to do as a value creator. I want to show up with intention, and then I want to execute with integrity. And in a business setting, it's really easy to get into a business and start a business and go into your day-to-day business and just kind of let the experience develop on its own. And in your business, you're going to have an experience that's created in your business. Now, the question is, are you a part of that experience, or is that just organically happening? And are your patients or clients creating that experience for you? Are your team members creating that experience for you, rather than having one that's actually intentionally created by the vision that you had when you started your business? And so that's the thing that I try to get business owners to focus on, is how do we create that with intention?
Love that. Love that. And obviously, I was actually in my morning routine this morning, kind of meditating on some thoughts. I've got I've got kids, I've got teenagers now, and there's that struggle back and forth between this illusion of control, right? Those teenagers go through this experience of, I want more control in my life. I want to make my decisions. And I remember being a teenager thinking, I can't wait to live on my own because I can choose what I eat every day. I can choose what I go play. And a lot of times control is this illusion. And there's so many things in our day that just start happening. Like we wake up and we just get on this treadmill. And from what I've heard you in some of the things that have really stood out to me in your book and in the things that you talk about is that it's momentum and destination that we can control. We choose our destination, and it's controlling the momentum. How do you bring the team together and all of you be on the same page that gives the illusion that we're in control, but trying to give as much control to get it back so that we control our day instead of our day controlling us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this really comes down to leadership, and leadership is a huge responsibility. I mean, if we're being honest, to be a leader is to really be the standard bearer for everything that we do in any organization we lead or in our own families that we lead. And so I want to make sure that I'm leading people well. And that comes from having a mindset of, how do I create a scenario where things happen through me, they don't happen to me. Because if we're not careful, if we allow too much control to be relinquished and we're reacting all the time, we become a victim to all the things that happen to us. We become a victim to how our team shows up, how our clients show up. And what happens is we have a series of things that we tolerate, we put up with, we deal with, and pretty soon it takes us really far away from our original intention or where we wanted to be, because we're not showing up as a leader in a powerful way. And so how do we get the team in there? Look, I always say, as a leader, your credibility is your currency. That's the only currency you have as a leader that's a dominant currency, is your credibility, which means if I say it, we do it. And if we don't do it, I have a pretty darn good reason why we don't do it. But everything that I say is something that unfolds and happens unless we determine in a very structured way or in a very intentional way of why we didn't move forward with that. And that comes to what I ask my team members to do and how I delegate, how I show up as a leader. And I just did a workshop on accountability for Salt Lake County employees yesterday. Nice. And we talk about this. Look, if I don't lead myself well, because what happens with accountability and leadership is we expect other people to do things the way that we want them done. But the reality is I need to show up in a very purposeful and intentional way and be accountable to myself. And when I'm accountable to myself, I can hold other people accountable. And this is challenging. It doesn't mean we're going to be perfect every time. As leaders, like you said, Corey, we don't always have control. Look, I may get in a car accident on my way to the office, or something may happen that, hey, I didn't have any control over that. But if I've prepared my team and I've prepared my business well, my business should be able to function at a certain level with or without my involvement. And if it can't, that's a great standard bearer to help me decide, hey, what would I do next time? How do I want to be prepared for the next time that this happens, so that our business can run with or without my involvement?
Yeah, and let's expand on that principle for just a second, if you don't mind, because I see so many of our practice owners hire a practice manager and like walk away. Like, okay, you're the practice manager now. You've been anointed, and I'm going to go do my dentistry. I'm going to go do my patient care, right?
Yeah.
So what's your advice for those docs that are just relinquishing their power to just an office? I shouldn't say just office manager, because a well-trained office manager is so valuable.
Absolutely. It can be a really great tool. And my advice to a business owner is that you never stop being a steward of your business. And I'm really passionate about this. And should you have an office manager who maybe finishes your sentences or completes you where you're not whole? Because I know a lot of visionary business owners that love to take a project 80% of the way, and then the last 20% is a total it's a total shit show. I mean, nothing good happens at that 20% unless they have a finisher, someone who can take that and run with it. So I'm a big fan of that, but we have to be careful about abdication. And I think, look, if you're a business owner who doesn't want to understand your financials, if you never want to manage people, and you want to just come in and do the work that you do, those are called associates. That's what an associate does. And an owner is someone who's a steward, who's a caretaker of the business and all the stakeholders that are in the business. So if I have a manager that I've hired to do a lot of management work and project work, that's fantastic. You should do that. But also, you should look at, how do I ensure that this manager is equipped with the tools to be successful? Because if they're not taking care of my team, I'm not being a good steward by having a poor steward of my team manage over them. And so I've got to make sure that I create the space for training, development, insight, understanding of how people are doing, where they're taking the pulse of the team and where they're at. And if I do that, then I'm being a good steward of my business. But the myth that you can just come in and practice your craft and go home doesn't exist. That is not something that an owner has the luxury of doing, because there's always something that you can do at a high level, even with a manager in place, that's important. But I see a lot of business owners abdicate responsibility in certain areas, and then they pay the price later because things don't show up the way they want them to, because again, there was no intention there, and there was no integrity in the relationship either.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Let's go on to, connecting your team. How you've got some great principles on this.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was 25 years old, I had my first leadership assignment. I had a boss who was high up in the company tell me, Brandon, the key to managing and running a team is don't get close to them. Hold them out here. Now,
Yeah.
that was great advice. Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that I was the Michael Jordan of emotional unavailability. I could shut I could shut people out with the best of them. I was awesome at that. And that was really bad advice for me because I held my team out at an arm's length. And
Mm.
because of that, we never had a connection. The connection is important, not because you need to be best friends and go everywhere together and eat ice cream out of the same dish. I'm not talking about that kind of a relationship. What I'm talking about is, look, you want your team members to know that you are for them and that you have their best interests at heart. If you do that, they'll follow you. They'll allow you to have influence. They'll follow through on things and go the extra mile. There'll be people who work in an empowered way. There'll be people who really care about the business and emotionally invest in that when they know that the leaders care about them as human beings. And let's not be lost on this. Look, we can talk about having fancy metrics dashboards with blue IQ, systems and processes that run themselves, but people are the things that make the business work. And
Yeah.
there's an African proverb that I love that says, look, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Nice.
Connecting with people is a way for me to create influence so that they walk with me, not me dragging my whole team behind me, trying to bend them to my will. I failed as a leader early on in my career, an absolute failure, because I didn't know how to connect. And when I started to learn how to connect better, then they started to respond to me. And this is, there's been a lot of neuroscience and a lot of studies done on this area. So it's not just me saying that, I read this in The Secret, or Eckhart Tolle told me that, if you just imagine this in your mind, and, I'm not talking about unicorns and fluffy. I'm talking about real research that's been done on, if people feel connected to the people that lead them, they will work differently for you. They'll respond to your criticism. They'll respond to accountability. They'll respond better if they think that you're a friend versus someone who's their enemy. And creating connection is a key part to really bridging the gap with employees and getting them emotionally invested in the work that we do.
I love that. And do you mind if I just ask a question to go a little further? What
Yeah.
do you do as a leader specifically to connect with your team? Like, give me one or two examples of how you specifically connect with your team.
Yeah. Really simple. Number one, I ask deep, powerful questions of my team about what their hopes, dreams, fears, desires, goals, strengths, weaknesses. I want to know everything. In fact, I'll ask so many questions, and I'm not going to make it weird. Okay, I'm not going to ask you, the last time you were intimate with your spouse or anything like that. But I am going to ask a lot of questions
HR might have a problem with
just to
that.
get to know who you are. I want to get to know who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you're hopeful for. I just want to know who you are. There's a proverb, chapter 20, verse 5. It says, the purpose of a man's heart are deep waters. One who has insight draws them out. There's the way people show up on the surface, and then there's the desires of their heart and what they really want. And I just try to get to the bottom of what those things are so I can connect to them in a powerful way. And sometimes that means that we recognize opportunities that reside outside of my office, and it means that they need to take a next step, maybe for another company or somewhere else. And I support that. And I really fight and advocate for my team to grow and develop, even if that growth and development takes them outside of the four walls of our office.
Yeah, that's great. And it's that personal growth that the research shows is actually more valuable than the paycheck that they get, because that's something
Absolutely.
that they can actually take with them and go the distance with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
super
true.
cool. Well, let's jump into defining that experience then. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we look at, okay, what do we want people to accomplish or experience through our business? And the reason why we do that is because every business right now faces commoditization, right? So we talk about chiropractors and dentists. We'll use those examples. If I'm a chiropractor, it's the joint, right? Or if I'm in dentistry, it's Heartland Dental, Perfect Teeth, Aspen Dental. There's all these corporate owned companies that try to make businesses commoditized. The first thing I want to understand is, how do I separate myself from everyone else? Because if I try to compete on price, I'm going to fail. I'm going
Every
to
time.
fail. It's not going to
Yeah,
work. There's always someone cheaper. There's always someone who has lower standards than me, who's willing to sell themselves out for less money than I'll sell myself out for.
for
So
sure.
that's always a worthiness issue first and foremost. But then I look at, okay, let's look at what is the overarching experience that we want people to have. That it kind of incorporates a lot of times the personality of the business owner. When people come to a workshop of mine, for instance, they're going to see a different experience. I'm probably going to use language that other people would say that is not appropriate. You should not talk like that at a workshop. Or I'm just going to say fun things, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to work on things in a way that's not stuffy. It's not uptight. It's just a representative of a representation of who I am. Now, if you don't like that, I totally respect that too. Don't come to my workshop, right? There's plenty other stuffy presenters who will give you the most dry, mind-numbingly boring presentation that you could
Too
find.
many.
And they'll do that, right? So go to those guys. They'll love it if you came. So, I look at what is the overall experience that we want people to have? What are the outcomes that we want people to experience when they work with us? Then we start to map out each touch point of the business: phone touch points, in-person touch points, the actual work touch points, what happens before, what happens after, and then identifying what do we want people to think, feel, smell, hear, touch, see. All the senses need to be engaged. And what I really want people to walk away with is a powerful emotional experience. You could be the best technician in the world. And I tell dentists this all the time. You could be so great at your craft, so technically proficient, but at the end of the day, no one knows the difference between someone who laid a good crown or a bad crown until maybe 2 or 3 years down the road. If the crown falls out of their mouth, then they know they got maybe not so good service. But that time, it's too late. You could be so great, but if people don't enjoy you as a human being and you don't connect with them on an emotional level and give them that emotional experience, that's going to diminish the great work that you've done. And so I've had plenty of people that I've worked with or that have worked with my company in the past who have been really smart people who don't know how to connect emotionally. People don't want to work with them, even if they're getting results, which is crazy because they're getting results through the process, but they don't enjoy the process. And I think there has to be that element of how do we do a great job for people, but also wrap that emotion and the feeling and just the feel good behind that. And so people walk away from that experience saying, you know what, I really enjoyed that. I got the result, but I also enjoyed the way we got the result too. And I think that's what we try to do at every touch point is recognize, how do we want people to feel? What do we want them to think? What do we want them to see? What do we want to define all those different touch points and then let other people know in the business, what is your role in this experience? How do you show up in this experience to deliver it? And I look at it kind of like your business is a show. And you would never show up to a play, or at least heaven forbid you should, unless it's like a fifth grade or a kindergarten play where people weren't prepared to deliver a great show. You'd never see someone say, okay, well, what are my lines? Well, what part am I playing? Am I the lead role? Am I supporting? You have a management process and a stage manager and all these people who they've gone through the lighting, the scenery, the experience of what people hear when they walk in the room. All the actors know their parts. That's the way I treat a business, is how do we get all those people playing their part and doing so in a way that engages the senses and really delivers a high level experience.
That is key. And I would even go one step further than that, and having the practice storyboard it, like literally storyboard out the experience of the patient and identifying that storyboard, the feelings, the emotion, exactly what they're experiencing and who that key role, like who's the actor speaking at this time, and create that playbook. Yeah. In fact, I know you guys offer an opportunity to actually go through an alignment and the execution blueprint. We've got up on the screen right now how to get a hold of Brandon at thebusinessaccelerator.com/blueprint or Blue IQ. We'll actually have this link below the show as well. But tell us a little bit about what they would experience in this opportunity.
Yeah, the alignment and execution blueprint is a tool that we use with all our clients that allow them to really understand the foundational elements of their business and get everything down on paper. What is my mission, my vision, my values? What's unique about our business? What's a impossible game that we've wanted to play in our business? How do we want to be perceived in our market? What are our objectives? And then we go through 3D questioning. What do you want to start, stop, and keep doing to be successful? So we always want to start new things, but we forget that when we start new things, there's probably other things that we need to stop doing in order to engage in those more successful behaviors or habits. So the alignment and execution blueprint starts with the core blueprint where it works you through that process. There's a part in there that helps you identify KPIs so that if you use, so when you're using Blue IQ, you can know, okay, what are the KPIs that we want to really have as a part of this. And then we go through, how do we break down our annual objectives into quarterly objectives? How do we break those down into personal objectives? And there's even a little project management tool, a little sheet to kind of help you break that down and keep track of all your projects and who's responsible for them and when they're due. And there's a glossary of terms that kind of help you identify some of the wording that we use, because it may be a little different than what you've experienced. But this is a great way to just map out who your business is, who it's serving, what it's for, and what action you want to create next to create that business by design. It's all about being intentional and mapping that out on paper. And we have a lot of clients that I work with that just don't write it down. They keep it all in their head, but this doesn't help anyone understand the roadmap and how they can serve that roadmap on the team. They don't see the things that we see in our own head. So this gets it all out on paper so that people can see it.
Cool. About how long does that typically take?
Man, if you do it right, I mean, we're talking probably hours to do this. If you've never done it before, it might take you a week to go through this whole thing and map everything out. If you've done it before and you're used to it, I mean, you could probably get it done in a couple of hours.
Cool. Well, again, to our audience, we talk about mastering the fundamentals. This is a fundamental cornerstone, is identifying these things in your practice and establishing those with the team, just like what Brandon's talked about today. And these are the things that are going to skyrocket who you are. It's going to help you identify the destination of who you want your practice to become and bring everybody together. Like Brandon said, if you want to go far, you do this as a team. If you want to go fast, you're going to do it yourself. And there's plenty of successful companies out there with one employee. However, they're unicorns and they're very hard to find. And we are practices. We are group practices. We're bringing you tools of scalability. And so, Brandon, thank you for joining us today. Any last tidbits that you want to share with our audience before we sign off?
Yeah, just one quick thing. When we talk about experience, number one, it's all about the back end processes and systems. That delivers the front end veneer of what you see. The second thing is that there is economically viable proof that leading by experience and creating experience is a way to increase the amount of price that you can charge, increase your authority in the marketplace. There's a ton of financial benefits to this. It's not just for show. This is something that's economically viable as well.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Well, again, thank you, Brandon. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the holiday and the day off on Monday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
To our Blue IQ audience, remember we're here every Friday. We're here 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern, bringing you great guests to help you really drive and engage your team and build the practice of your dreams. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome.